magneto ignition, which I may convert to coil ignition, gearbox. Everything is there except this bracket here, which supports the gearbox, and I'll be able to make one of those up. Even comes complete with a crank in it. The head is off. Everything's working nicely. The motor's been turned on its side now for easy access to the underside. The sump is in good condition. It appears to have never been in salt water or sitting in salt water for any period of time. The paint is flaking off here and there, which is nothing. And I'll now go over with a wire buff and clean the whole area up prior to priming it. And here's the surfaces nicely cleaned up, ready for priming. And the flywheel. Underside all primed. The valves have been faced off and lapped in, and the head is about to go back on. There's a shot inside the crankcase. The engine's been wire buffed all over now, and all traces of old flaky paint and rust have been removed. It's now primed with a metal primer. This is part of the distributor cap. There's had a piece broken out at the bottom there, and it has been repaired with epoxy resin, which adheres well to the Bakelite and does a great job. And here is the top part of the distributor cap, which is also broken along this edge. It's now being built up with epoxy and will be reshaped and be like new. This is a high tension lead spark plug terminal cap, which has also been broken, and it also will be mended with epoxy. This is an ALBIN badge, which has been moulded in epoxy. Here is the engine now. It's been painted, almost complete, just the dyno start to recondition and the carburetor to be checked out. Here is the distributor cap, nicely repaired and painted with a special paint. The spark plug cap's looking like new. Manifold in place, copper lines polished, water pump installed. The name has been outlined, also on the gearbox. Here's the engine now, suspended on the hoist, ready to be dropped into the beds. I've had to modify the beds. The Penguin that came out required a narrower setup, so I've had to modify these beds and lengthen them to suit this engine. And here's the motor sitting on its beds. It's all lined up nicely there on the coupling. There wasn't much shimming to do on the motor, actually it went in near perfectly. This platform here is for the seawater pump, which pumps water to cool the exhaust line. It's a gear type pump, and it'll run off a pulley which will be affixed to the crankshaft here. The fuel line has to be redirected on this boat. It's on the opposite side of the engine, so it's now run across this way and across here, and eventually up to this point here. The engine has grip trays to stop oil leaks contaminating the bilge. There's one there, and there's also one under the gearbox. An exhaust system that will eventually be bolted up to there. So I have to cut this out of this flange here to that shape shown there. This is a stand to support a tank to hold cooling water. Fresh water cooling, that is. The motor will be cooled with fresh water, which will extend its working life immeasurably. And here is the freshwater tank here, partly made. Fuel line redirected and connected to the carburetor. Here is the freshwater cooling system, which fits under the hull. It's made from standard household copper tubing with a skin fitting there, elbows, T-piece, all just threaded together with soft solder, which is quite okay for this purpose. It's 5 feet in length. Here is the exhaust extension, which has been made up of standard galvanised fittings, which from there connects up to the rubber hose exhaust pipe. This connection here provides cooling seawater to the exhaust pipe, and it will be connected by hose to this point here on this pump driven by the engine. The inside end of this connection is bent around so that it directs the water in the same direction as the exhaust. This is important, otherwise salt water can get back up to the valves and seize the valves. Here is a completed water tank strapped into place. This is a support bracket for the rear end of the gearbox, which was missing from the engine. I made a pattern, had the item cast in gunmetal. There it is there, and it fits down onto the end of the gearbox there, and we've bolted in place. There's the mounting bracket in place now, along with the 2 supports for the dashboard. And there's the dashboard in place. Instruments in place now. This is the back of the dashboard, the wiring completed. Fuse, relay, starter dynamo. This is the belt setup. This one goes to the dynastart for starting, and this centre pulley drives a seawater pump to cool the exhaust. This is a throttle setup here, and it's activated by simply pulling up this knob, pulling outwards and dropping it down. It has a rack system which gives positive location for each throttle setting. Here's the boat on the water now. Here's a view out over the stern. The boat's running nice and clean.